Hello and welcome to another UC Partner Trend session. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Neil from DSTNY Automate. How's it going, Neil?
Very good. Good to speak to you again, Tom.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And we're going to be talking about BYOC today. So to start with, could you talk through kind of how you're seeing the BYOC market and how the dynamic in the market is changing?
Yeah, sure. So, bring your own carrier has been around for quite a long time. Traditionally, you had enterprises that had UC platforms and PBXs where they could choose their carrier. Certainly, the larger enterprises, and smaller enterprises obviously had hosted services on hosted PBX platforms back in the day. As those communication platforms moved to the cloud, initially it was those smaller companies that moved to the cloud UC platforms, and therefore most of those platforms were really delivering their own calling plans, because those SMEs traditionally didn't have their kind of own contracts with the carriers. But as the market has kind of moved up market in terms of those larger enterprises, those larger enterprises really like to have control over their communication services and separate that from their call control. So if you take Teams, for instance, Microsoft. So Microsoft have had direct routing for a long time. That was really originally available for kind of on-prem, and then effectively people started moving that to the cloud. So enterprises could choose their own carrier services, and connect it into Microsoft. And then that has now evolved into Operator Connect, where Microsoft has a much closer relationship with those operators to deliver a quality of service and a better user experience. And of course, then you have the market is changing because a lot of the other UCs are really going along the same route. So we've seen Zoom, who have now kind of launched their provider exchange capability for exactly the same reason, that enterprises want to have better control over the communication services. And WebEx, Cisco with their WebEx calling platform has also done the same. And that's really because enterprises, many of them have long-term relationships with carriers that they want to retain. They want to retain their number plans, etc. But also those carriers, do provide other services, lots of other services to those enterprises. So, PSTN services effectively just one of a number of services that service providers give out to those larger enterprises.
Yeah, great. So let's bring service providers a bit more into the conversation. What approach do you think service providers should take when it comes to BYOC?
So I think they need to look at their customer base and really understand their needs. The enterprise, no one size fits all in terms of a cloud UC platform. Enterprises these days are really, it's a bit like the conscious consumerism we see in the consumer space. Enterprises are much better informed in terms of the capabilities of the communication platforms, and effectively they're making the choice of the UC platform they want to implement and they want to use. And in many cases, those larger enterprises may have multiple UC platforms within the same enterprise, either through acquisition or through departmental choice. And therefore, the carriers that provide those PSTN services really need to look at that to say, we need the ability to integrate into those UC platforms so that we can provide the PSTN connectivity to the enterprises that are making those choices. So in some ways, I don't think they have a choice in the long run, because they need to expand their addressable market by being able to address all the myriad of enterprises that choose the multiple UC platforms.
Okay, great. And so, when we talk about BYOC, it's quite easy just to talk about the carriers and the service providers. That's what programs like Operator Connect are targeting. But what role can a reseller play in BYOC?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, the resellers for a long time actually have been reselling BYOC in form of SIP trunking services. So they resell SIP trunks. So in essence, a lot of those resellers will just naturally migrate across to reselling some of those BYOC services from the service providers, because they've been doing it for a long time. Some of the other more capable resellers, in terms of the larger managed service providers or aggregators, as they're sometimes known, will kind of have to find where they fit into this marketplace. Certainly in Operator Connect for Teams, they're not really currently allowed to play in some cases, so they'll have to resell a service provider's Operator Connect service. But UC providers like Zoom and also Cisco WebEx, they do allow the larger aggregators to play in that market. So I think you'll see a kind of a range of different services and models moving forward in how the resellers kind of fit into this space. Whether that's from just a pure resale model, in which case they resell those PSTN services and then layer on the additional capabilities, through managed services, security, data services, etc., etc. and the managed service providers kind of adjusting their services a little bit in some cases, but really then being able to also play with those other UCs. And I think at some point, maybe Microsoft will kind of identify that some of those those larger aggregators in essence look like a natural regulated service provider, and will be able to play in that market. So I think it's really, I don't think it's a massive change in the reseller market. I think they'll just have to make adjustments depending on kind of which UCs they end up working with.
Okay, so if we wrap all this up, Neil, wrap up all the trends in the BYOC space, could you just tell us where DSTNY Automate fits into the market?
Yeah, so obviously we run a platform that effectively, allows service providers and those large aggregators to kind of connect to multiple UC platforms, because it's not just the voice connectivity. Most of them have rich APIs that are used for those BYOC programs, and of course, anytime you have to integrate into those APIs, there is complexity, and there's also the ongoing upkeep of those APIs and the functionality as they evolve. So effectively, our play in the market is to ease the aggregation of those multi UCs towards an operator or an aggregator by providing kind of a simplified interface on their side. So a simplified kind of order management and API, and also a singular kind of SIP trunk infrastructure. And then we kind of take care of the complexity on the other side of all the APIs, and also the normalization of kind of the SIP traffic over to the different UCs. So we see ourselves as being able to allow those those operators and those aggregators to get to market quickly and not really have to invest in those multiple UC practices to keep that the platforms effectively up to date and work with the customers. So that's our experience, is kind of being able to kind of aggregate and play in the API and the automation side, and the SIP trunking side, and allow the operators to kind of outsource that to somebody else and really focus on feeding their customers other services and upselling services, and taking care of their needs, and we take care of the complexity on the other side. So we're really an outsourced partner to those aggregators and service providers to allow them to go to market quickly, and retain their competitive nature in that marketplace, because it is an ever evolving and quickly evolving market.
Okay, I've just got one final question for you, Neil. I'm going to ask you to get the crystal ball out. How do you expect the BYOC market to develop over the next couple of years?
So I think the trend, so this was a trend that kind of got, is one of those things that got accelerated by the pandemic, amongst other things. And that's because really, the move to cloud UC got accelerated during the pandemic. And so if you look at how it's evolved, most of the UC platforms have now launched that kind of, formal bring your own carrier platform, and functionality, and enabled operators like ourselves to partner with them to provide that. I think that will just carry on, because I think more and more enterprises will want to segregate call control from the carrier services, and that because those carrier services will kind of be enriched. But I think on the other side, the UC call control platform kind of as I said, that's changing quicker probably than the PSTN side. So I think this kind of separation of the two will continue, and it won't be just the large enterprises that do that. I think it will start to kind of roll down into the smaller and medium enterprises that kind of want to have that control over the two aspects of their communications. So yeah, I think it's a trend. it was kind of where the market was going. It was accelerated by the pandemic, and I think it will just continue. And I think we'll probably end up with more kind of UC vendors probably going the same way of Microsoft, Zoom, and WebEx in kind of introducing those kind of formalized bring your own carrier programs.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see it develop, Neil, and I appreciate you taking us through that today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the session, you can find more UC Partner Trends content at uctoday.com, and we'll see you next time.